Okay, so I work with a group called Wellness Wheel. So pieces of us are under the SHA, but the rest of it is a not-for-profit organization. So it's a group of physicians, nurses, and support staff. We really started because of Dr. Skinner and the work that he was doing around HIV and hepatitis C in First Nations communities to serve people who weren't able to come to Saskatoon to see him. When he moved to Regina, it evolved through conversations with some communities, particularly community members and peers, so people with lived experience, advocating to have care within their home communities. The way that our team works, because the physicians all have their own practices somewhere else, we really only have them for maybe that 1 day or 2 days per month, right? So, but the patient care that's required can happen any day during the month. So I think there are definitely opportunities where we can sort of we can be that sort of touch point to sort of extend things or support in many rural and remote areas, including on reserve First Nations, that registered nurses are often sort of the key provider that's there can be there on a regular basis. So I think, as much as we can maximize that scope of practice and integrate RNSPs into our role, I'm all for that. And actually our physician team is very supportive of that as well. So we really focus on anything primary care related, from cancer screening to addictions management to general walk-in types of issues. We also have some chronic disease management. We've evolved since about February. We've brought on a couple of providers around pre- and postnatal care, specifically in First Nations communities. So we have a couple of docs who are working with communities on that, and the uptake has been really tremendous, and we've just actually had our first baby delivered through that process, so that's been pretty cool. So I'm really excited about sort of this next chapter and sort of what can we take on. Most First Nations have little to no access around primary care, chronic disease care, communicable diseases care, other than the mandated programs from Health Canada. So our goal was to work with communities to improve access and to ensure equitable access to care. And so we do that by working directly with the community, having some community engagement, working with them around what their health priorities are and what their focus is. It's a really flat approach, so even though the physicians are prescribing and the nurses are sort of acting on that, and then we're working with the community or the client or the family, it's very flat, and we keep that community or family or client at the center, right? So for an elder, for example, who's got high blood pressure and he doesn't want to take his medications, that's okay. I want to make sure that you still feel safe to come and see me, right? So I want to establish that relationship. So of course I care for people to want to take their hypertensive medications, but it's more important to me to have that relationship and have them feel safe to come back. So I have a long history of being an HIV nurse. That's kind of where I started in my career in chronic diseases. So that's kind of always been my route, my passion. And so when I made the change to start with Wellness Wheel, it opened a whole new world for me in terms of going to First Nations. It's by far, hands down, the best nursing that I've ever done, that I'm probably the most proud of. It's a great honor and privilege to go to First Nations communities, to work with the community around their health priorities, to be trusted and develop that relationship. I think especially timely now when we think about, truth and reconciliation. I struggle a little bit with that because reconciliation sort of denotes that there was a good relationship to start with and we're sort of repairing that, but I'm not sure that that's the case. So I think it's more about establishing new relationships and moving forward around trust. I'm very aware that any community that we're welcomed into, that I might represent every healthcare provider that person has ever seen before, right? So the onus is on me to initiate and try to establish a really good relationship. It doesn't always happen that way, but we also are aware of any providers that we bring with us, it's the same thing, right? We want to make sure that we're always moving forward in a good way. I would say even, with all of what's happened lately around the residential schools and the unmarked graves being discovered, has been very heavy for our team and for me personally. We were out last week and talking with people about, parents, extended family members having gone to those schools and sort of the stories that they're now sharing and the trauma that they're reliving every time a new site is uncovered, right? And so It just makes me very mindful of the importance of the work. I know that I'm very privileged. I grew up privileged. I've had the benefit of a lot of things, and you know, being able to provide equitable access to people who are really invested in their health. You know, I think there's always the connotation that because someone doesn't show for an appointment or because they don't take their medications the way we want them to, or they don't show up on the time that we prescribe to them, that they're not interested or invested in their health. And actually, it's so far from the truth. It's allowed me to see that there's so many different versions of health. Just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad, or that they don't care. So yeah, it's so much fun, and I'm just very privileged to do the work.